We continue to cover what has transpired last night in London, Ontario, when a family of 5 were out walking. According to police accounts, a man in a pickup truck, a 20-year-old man, mounted the curb. They allege that he then ran over that family. 4 were killed. Only a 9-year-old boy has survived, and he remains in hospital without his teenage sister, without his mother, without his father, without an older member of the family. All of them killed in what appears to be a hate-inspired attack, according to investigators. Now let's look a bit deeper at that, and we're going to bring Jessica Davis, a former strategic analyst with CSIS, into the conversation, as well as Leah West, a former national security lawyer with the Department of Justice. Leah, let me start with you. We're just talking about sort of online hate here and radicalization. Your initial thoughts on where we are today?
I guess taking it back to this specific crime, it's not, I don't know enough to make any kind of assessment as to whether or not this individual was motivated by online hate. There's speculation, obviously, about why somebody would engage in this kind of act of violence. There must be some motivation there, but unfortunately, it's too soon to tell. And I suspect that will come in the coming days, trying to understand why it was this individual took this allegedly deliberate action.
And Leah, just sort of pick up on that, there is now discussion that the London police, who are the primary investigators in this, have brought in the RCMP as well to look at whether terrorism charges would be warranted. Just based on your experience, what is the threshold for something like that?
So in order to be something that is a terrorism offense, so here we would likely see a charge, since murder was committed, allegedly, the commission of an offense for a terrorist group. There can be a terrorist group of 1, but to do that, there needs to be terrorist activity, and that's where the threshold is quite a bit higher. For something to reach the level of terrorist activity, you need 3 things. You need the intentional causing of death or serious bodily harm, which we do allegedly have here. And then we need 2 other elements that are unique to terrorism. So first, that the act of violence be committed for a political, religious, or ideological purpose, objective, or cause. And that's where we'd see RCMP investigating this person's motivations. And then also that that act of violence was done with the intention of intimidating the public or a segment of a population. Here, hypothetically, it could be members of the Islamic faith would be the segment of the population. But you need to have all 3 of those elements for something to be terrorist activity. And that's why I suspect, you're going to need a thorough investigation of this person's motivations before we would potentially see any type of terrorism charges.
I see. Okay, Leah, that's a very good point, and high threshold that you're raising for us. Jessica, as we talk about the online hate that is available, and we have no idea what this 20-year-old may have been exposed to at this point. That is all to come in the investigation. But it is abundantly clear that there is a large volume of hate that is out there. It's something I know that you have tracked. Can you sort of walk me through what the intent is and the ready availability of it?
Well, the material could really be anything. There's so much online in terms of material that we would consider to be extremist or potentially radicalizing. In this case, we have very little information about what the individual accessed. Initial reporting suggests that the online component helped police understand the motive here. And then if we think about that in terms of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim sentiment, there's quite a lot of that online. It ranges from, somewhat mainstream to very, very extreme. So depending on what the individual accessed, how that material was consumed, who the individual may have had contact with, that's going to inform how the police have understood the motive.
And who is most susceptible to be influenced by that kind of a message of online hate?
The radicalization process is extremely unique. So it generally involves a combination of unique push and pull factors. So it could be sociodemographic factors, it could be economic factors, it could be any range of sort of personal life experiences, and then the confluence with political, ideological, or religiously motivated extremist material. The interesting thing here, though, is that just because somebody is an extremist doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to mobilize to violence, to take action on their ideas. And that process is also unique. So how people go about doing that. So I think that in this case, the investigators are likely to be looking to understand certainly the radicalization process, but more importantly, how and what steps the individual may have taken to mobilize and commit this attack.
Leah, just as you look at what the investigators might be doing at this point, early moments, we're still within the first 24 hours, forensic work at the scene, but what are the other kinds of things that they'll be looking to ensure they have done?
Well, certainly they will seize any electronic devices the individual has and get search warrants in order to search those for evidence of motivation or planning. They'll also, probably attempt to interview the individual. Who knows if that has already taken place to some extent. The fact that they had enough to say that this was a deliberate attack, hence a murder charge, planned and deliberate, leads me to believe that there is some evidence already that the individual intended to commit the act of violence that he did and to take those lives. So whether or not that's something that they got from his devices, something that they got in the vehicle at the time that they arrested him and would have searched, something that he said to them or that he may have said to others that then provided that information to law enforcement. They'll also be looking at his close contacts and his social media presence to understand his networks and motivations and whether or not this was an act that he took on his own or in connection with others. So they'll be engaging in a lot of different fronts, but there's a lot of stuff that they could do quite quickly that might point to his motivations.
Jessica, the weapon in this case was a truck, a pickup truck. What do we know from other attacks where there has been a vehicle used as a weapon?
In other attacks, and this crosses the political spectrum or the political and ideological spectrum in terms of a tactic, the vehicle-ramming attack has been commonly used by a variety of different groups. Generally, we know a few things. Individuals will try to get the biggest vehicle they can to inflict the most amount of damage. They'll generally conduct some form of reconnaissance to make sure that where they plan to conduct the attack, they're going to be the victims that they want to strike, which is very unfortunate, I know, but it's a reality of the process. There's also a number of preparatory behaviors that people undertake. So it could be financial preparations, understanding that they're probably going to be arrested or they may die at the scene. People undertake these sort of final arrangements, planning and preparation activities. So there's a lot of different things that go into a vehicular attack. The interesting thing is that it may strike people as the kind of attack that's sudden and spontaneous, but research shows that that's actually rarely the case. Most of the time, there's planning and preparation that goes into these kinds of attacks.
Yeah, I think back to the Yonge Street van attack in Toronto, and again, early days. There's a lot we still don't know about what's happened and the individual who is the suspect here, but certainly a lot of similarities in terms of getting the biggest vehicle possible and lots of planning in advance.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I would sort of throw out to either of you, when you look at the volume of online hate that's out there and how easy it is to access, is the way to combat it to try to take that down or to provide a counter narrative?
I'm not sure that it's one or the other. I think it may be a bit of a combination of both. Takedowns generally force people onto other platforms. They can force the narratives underground, which can make it more difficult to combat. Counter narratives, while evidence of their effectiveness is a bit limited at the moment, do show some promise in terms of helping to redirect people towards other more constructive outlets for their views or to expose them to different views. But I also want to emphasize too that the online component here is only one piece. There's very likely a network in terms of individuals who are speaking to each other, who may exist in the real world, if you will, physically. And there may be individuals in this person's life who knew or suspected what they may be planning. So there's a real life component here that's very important too, and we don't want to overlook that.
Leah?
I just add, as Jeff alluded to, as complex as the radicalization and then the radicalization to violence pathway is, so too is how we counter terrorism and extremism and radicalization. There is no one-size solution, and you will come across individuals at various stages of that evolution. So it's not a either-or proposition, as Jeff said. It really is a multifaceted approach to countering these narratives that are really taking hold in our communities.
Leah and Jessica, thank you as always for your insights. We certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.